Hey guys, this is Aarav from the Guild of Shadows, and in this video I will be briefly going over each of the Canon ships used by the Republic Navy during the Clone Wars. So let's get started. Number 1. Capital ships. Capital ships were the largest and the most powerful ships in the fleet. Their primary purpose was ship-to-ship combat. The Venator-class Star Destroyers, commonly known as Jedi cruisers, served as the primary capital ships of the Republic Navy. These ships were specialized for carrying large amounts of troops, supplies, vehicles, as well as intership combat. Having a great overall design, the Venators were the backbone of the Galactic Republic Navy. The ships also carried a complement of 450 starfighters, 2,000 clone troopers, and 24 walkers. It is a common misconception that the Venator-class Star Destroyers were the only capital ships in the Republic fleet. However, there are actually two. The Victory-class Star Destroyer was once utilized by the Galactic Republic during the latter years of the Clone Wars. We do not have a canon appearance of this ship, but combining information from the novels Tarkin and Rogue One Catalyst, we get to know that the Victory was utilized by the Republic near the end of the Clone War. The Tarkin novel canonized the ship's name by establishing that Sentinel Base, an Imperial outpost, was deployed from a Victory-class Star Destroyer. Rogue One Catalyst tells us that the base was once used by the Republic as a safeguard for the new superweapon being built in the orbit around Geonosis. Therefore, it is canonically confirmed that the Victory-class Star Destroyers were once a part of the Republic Navy. The pictures I have shown you correspond to what the ship looks like in Legends continuity. Number 2. Assault ships. Assault ships were the smaller capital ships that were not quite as powerful as the big ones but still found uses in the Republic fleet. The Acclimator-class assault ship was primarily used as a troop transport with a carrying capacity of 16,000 clone troopers. These ships were used from the beginning of the Clone Wars, starting with the First Battle of Geonosis. The Acclimators were able to adequately defend themselves from attacks from separatist ships. Number 3. Cruisers and corvettes. These ships varied in armament between lightly armed and unarmed, and also had a wide range of applications in the Republic fleet. The first ship in this class is the Consular-class cruiser. This cruiser was used by the Republic to carry important officials on diplomatic missions. Despite being unarmed, these ships carried powerful shields for defense. A slightly updated model known as the Charger C-70 was a lightly armed version of the Consular cruiser and was used as an escort ship during the Clone Wars. The Arquitens-class cruiser was one of the more heavily armed ships of its class. The ship served primarily as escort ship and was minimally staffed, only requiring 2 pilots. These cruisers were more maneuverable than the Star Destroyers they accompanied. The Pelta-class frigates served primarily as medical ships. They were used to transport wounded clones to the medical stations. These ships also saw use by the Phoenix Rebel Cell during the Galactic Civil War. The stealth ship was very lightly armed but was equipped with a cloaking device which made it impossible for the enemy to detect the ship both by sensors and optical scanners. The CR-90 corvette was used later in the Clone Wars by the Republic Navy and served primarily as a diplomatic transport. The CR-90 served well beyond its tenure with the Republic, seeing further action in the Galactic Civil War and even in the New Republic era. It was built as a replacement for the Consular-class cruiser. Number 4. Gunships. The gunships served as the primary ferry and landing crafts for the Republic during the Clone Wars and came in 2 variants. The Low Altitude Assault Transport Infantry, or the LAATI, was a gunship that specialized in troop transport. These gunships were extremely versatile and capable of air to ground and air to air attacks. The LAATI was used throughout the Clone Wars and even saw action under the Rebel Alliance in the Galactic Civil War. The Low Altitude Assault Transport Carrier, or the LAATC, was a gunship that specialized in vehicle transport. These ships were designed to carry heavy ground vehicles like the ATTE. Number 5. Shuttles. Shuttles were similar to consular ships but were used for primarily transporting individuals and not cargo. Shuttles made up for the lack of carrying capacity with more agility over consular ships. The Eta class shuttle was used primarily by the Jedi Order for peacekeeping missions. Similarly, the T6 shuttle was used by the Jedi for the same purpose as the Eta class but was unarmed and was an older model. The New class shuttle was one of the largest shuttles in the Republic fleet and was primarily used as a transport shuttle. The New class shuttles were used throughout the Clone Wars but were phased out by the Lambda class shuttles during the reign of the Galactic Empire. The Theta class shuttles were used during the later years of the Clone Wars. This shuttle was used to carry Emperor Palpatine to Mustafar and was also used to transport Darth Vader's charred body back to Coruscant. Number 6. Starfighters. Starfighters served as the grunts of the Republic Navy and were highly mobile. The Alpha class Nimbus V-Wing starfighters were a late arrival to the Clone Wars and only saw action in the last days of the war. These fighters were only armed with dual laser cannons but made up for the lack of firepower in their speed and agility. Introduced in the second half of the war, the ARC 170 or the Aggressive Reconnaissance 170 starfighters were considered to be the best starfighters of the Republic Navy. They were heavily armed and were equipped with a hyperdrive. Each ARC 170 had two pilots, a gunner in the rear, and an astromech droid. The predecessor to the ARC 170 was the Z95 Headhunter. This model was not as strong as its successor in both firepower and range. The V-19 Torrents served as the first interceptor fighter in the Republic fleet. They were lightly armed and maneuverable, but lacked the firepower necessary to perform critical attacks on enemy ships. The BTL Y-Wing starfighters were used prominently throughout the Clone Wars. These starfighters primarily served as bombers and possessed a bubble turret which the operator could use to defend the ship from other starfighters. The Delta 7 starfighters were used by the Jedi generals of the Clone Army. They were designed with minimum internal tech and hyper-responsive controls that would allow the Jedi users to use their force abilities while flying. Delta 7s were considered to be interceptors and required a hyperspace ring to travel at light speed. An upgraded version of the Delta 7 called the Delta 7B was also used, which included two extra laser cannons. Finally, the Eta 2 Actis class was the latest Jedi starfighter and had a top speed greater than both of the Delta 7 models. They were also equipped with S-foils for better cooling, and instead of 4 laser cannons, the ship had 2 laser cannons and 2 ion cannons. The Eta 2 also had to use hyperspace rings for any hyperspace travel.